Good morning, sixth graders. Make sure that you are turned to this page. It says Independence Station in your packet. Today we are going to start by learning about the 4 different types of conflict. So conflict is a problem, and resolution is a solution to that problem. So read the following passage, then answer the questions to identify the conflict. What is the conflict or the problem here? And the resolution, the solution to that problem. Maria was walking down the street to get to her grandmother's house. She noticed a $100 bill on the ground. She didn't know whether or not to keep the money or search for someone who may have lost it. Maria then spotted someone who seemed as if he was looking for something and kept searching through his wallet. Maria went up to the man and discovered that the $100 was his, so she gave him the money. He was incredibly relieved. So I know this is really tricky too, guys. He was incredibly relieved. That is not a resolution. That didn't actually solve anything. Sure, it was a result of it being solved, but make sure you don't choose that, okay? The fact that she gave him the money because he discovered that it was his, that's what actually solved her conflict of not knowing what to do. So now flip to this page. We are going to learn about how there are 4 different types of conflicts or problems. The first, jot these all down and then continue the video when you have them. So the first is person versus person. This is when there's a problem between 2 characters or 2 people. In your life, if you're not getting along with someone or there's someone that you have a problem with, that is a person versus person conflict. But person versus self is when a character is struggling within his or her own mind. If you ever are just battling with your own emotions, if you're upset, if you feel insecure, this is person versus self. If you feel really worried about something, those are sometimes battles that you're having with yourself. So that is person versus self. Lastly, we have person versus nature, which is when a character is facing a problem caused by nature. So a lot of times we can't just point to a person and say that they caused a problem. They did this wrong. It's actually just caused by bigger other things in nature. Like the weather. If you're outside and there's really bad weather, that's a person versus nature conflict. If your clothes are soaking wet because it rained all over them, that's a person versus nature. But person versus society is when a character is caused by a society or a whole group of people, not just one person. So it's almost similar to person versus person, but it's like you feel like all of society is against you. So which type of conflict is this? After breaking his mother's favorite vase, Casey struggles to decide whether he should tell his mother the truth and face the consequences, or whether he should attempt to hide his mistakes and blame the family dog. Good, so be careful here because it seems like it might be person versus person, but Casey and his mom here are not at conflict yet. The conflict given here is that Casey struggles to decide. So that's the conflict he's having. So it's person versus self. He's trying to make a decision. Example 2, what type of conflict do you see here? Example 3, what type of conflict do you see here? And this one's a little bit tricky because we don't always think of a shark as nature, but heads up, whenever we're talking about person versus nature, if it's an animal in nature too, then it counts as person versus nature because it's not person versus person, self or society. So the conflict this person is facing is him versus nature. That's that shark. Example 4, it's the year 3030, and society is completely dependent on computers and robots. A young boy named Domino is flying his hoverboard to school when all of the machines start acting up and attacking people due to a powerful computer virus. What will Domino do now that the machines that are supposed to help him have turned against him? This one was really tricky. If you said person versus self, you weren't too far off. Honestly, that could maybe even be argued as correct. But more importantly, it's all of the machines that run this society have turned against Domino. That's what makes a person versus society. Lastly, there are a bunch of people here. This is a picture from the early civil rights movement, and they are picketing and holding up signs that say they want equal rights in schools, in housing, and an end to racism and bias. What type of conflict is this? So now that you have finished that, we're going to go and apply what we learned to Hatchet. Scroll to where it says Hatchet Practice. You are going to fill in the chart below with examples of conflicts that we see Brian face. Be as specific as possible. So right here, I put Brian is being eaten alive by mosquitoes and black flies. I know that that is a person versus nature conflict. So go ahead and circle person versus nature on your paper. Right here, I did it bold underline just because I can't circle right there. And then I want to also add in this thing a piece of advice, or I did here, whoops, evidence that supports or shows that this conflict is happening in this story. So you have to go back to your text and check. And I found this piece, because remember, it always has to be quotation marks and page number. Swarming hordes of mosquitoes that flocked to his body. So if you don't have all of your text on you, here's a little trick, and I put the instructions right here. If you Google Hatchet PDF, don't do it right now. Just watch me do it for a sec. Click the first one. It's in all caps. And then you click Control in the bottom left, F. A little search bar comes up so you can search words to find them in the text. So I actually searched mosquitoes and it took me here. So it made it really easy to find a piece of evidence. So you can use that little trick on your computer to get evidence for this column for each of them. It goes mostly on the next page. But first, lastly, you're also going to do resolution. So what I want you to do here is if this conflict that's over here to the left, if we've seen a resolution, if that has been solved and taken care of, then put a little check mark in the box. And if not, if this is a conflict we're still seeing Brian deal with, then do not put a check mark in the box. So now I want you to go ahead and flip the page and fill in the rest of this chart. Be careful, because for the next two, they're just like that. But there's one where I just put person versus nature. And I want you to go through and find a person versus nature conflict. Not the mosquito one I just gave. That would be obvious. Anywhere in chapters 1 through 9. Okay. Make sure that you say what the conflict is, evidence, whether it's been solved. And then the last one I put is pretty tricky too. That one, I just put a check mark. So it means I want you to find some kind of conflict that has been solved in the story. So go ahead and complete your worksheet all the way to the bottom. Make sure that evidence looks just like this one, okay? Say where you found it. Remember, it's Control F in the Hatchet PDF that'll get you there. And when you are done, take out your independent reading book.